My name is Rachel Maldonado. My website is rhmaldonado.com. Belief in the human spirit and desire to connect is the reason that I want to tell your story and mine. And I am with Lee Dabkey, and he has an incredible passion. Can you tell me about this?
Well, I'm a baseball fanatic. Behind me, I have about 300 autographed baseballs that I started collecting when I was about 8 years old. And I've had the privilege of meeting many of these players and actually have them sign the balls personally. Some of my favorite balls include people that are in the Hall of Fame. Maybe I didn't meet them, but I've had access and actually purchased those. Like I have Babe Ruth's baseball. I have a number of other famous players as well. So I'm quite proud of my baseball collection. And like I say, I'm a baseball fan.
Wow. Well, baseball is as American as apple pie, and I am just stunned by your baseball collection. That is amazing. Was Babe Ruth your favorite baseball to get, or which one was your absolute favorite?
Absolute favorite would probably be Christy Mathewson. Christy Mathewson was a baseball player that was inducted into the Hall of Fame, the first class. He had already passed, he had died. And so that baseball is probably the rarest baseball that I have, Christy.
Mm,
So that's my favorite.
wow. And since you were 8 years old, I mean, that is just incredible. And you say you have had friends or baseball players. Can you tell me about that?
Certainly, probably one of the more famous in the Chicago area that I met and became a friend with was Mr. Cub himself, Ernie Banks. I met Ernie Banks in 1993, I think it was. At that time, he was retired from baseball and already in the Hall of Fame. And he was working as a public relations representative for a company that was doing business with one of my best friends. One of my best friends realized I love baseball. I'd love to meet a baseball player. So he invited me to a lunch with Ernie Banks. So this was going to be one of the first times I was going to get to sit down with a Hall of Famer and have lunch with them. So I prepared questions that I wanted to ask him. Things like, what was it like to face Bob Gibson? And also, why in the batter's box did you finger the bat? So I came armed with these questions to ask Ernie. And quickly, after I got to meet him, I realized he really didn't like talking about himself. I sat down and we talked and I introduced myself. After that, he proceeded to interview me. Okay. He asked me, where did I grow up? Did I play Little League Baseball? What position did I play? Where did I go to school? Where did I get started in my career? What was my business like? What were the challenges I had in business? After about an hour, hour and a half, I left the meeting with him, not having answers to my questions, but I felt like I was $1 million because he really wanted to know me and get to know me. And I was really touched with him because I felt that he really wanted to know about me as a person. Now, Ernie wasn't very good with names, okay? So I would see him from time to time at baseball conventions, and he might remember some of the conversation we had, but he would never really remember your name, okay? And the next story that I have to talk about him to show how much of a people person he was a baseball game that I went with him to, a Cubs baseball game. Imagine going to a Cubs baseball game with Mr. Cub himself. And
That's amazing.
I had this opportunity in 1995. A couple of my friends and I had tickets, and we invited Ernie to come along to the Cubs game. Now, we had really great tickets, okay? But we got to the game, and it was in September of 95. It was kind of a cold, damp night.
Yeah.
Got to the ballpark, Ernie says, well, I don't know whether I want to sit out there and watch the ball game. He says, let's see if I can get us some better seats. So he walks right into the Cubs front office at Wrigley Field with us trailing behind him, walks into John McDonough's office, who was then an executive with the Cubs. And he says, John, I'm here with a couple of my friends here tonight. Is there a skybox open that we can, have? And John said, yeah, there's nobody using this skybox. And he dispatched an intern to take us to a skybox. So here we are, we're sitting in a skybox, the four of us, okay? And all these interns are running around getting us hot dogs, doing whatever we wanted to. And an intern comes up while I'm sitting there talking with Ernie and asked Ernie, he said, Jimmy Buffett is here. He is a big fan, and he would like to come by and meet you. Is that okay? And Ernie says, yeah, sure. Bring him by. And the intern turns and walks away. Ernie turns to me and says, who's Jimmy Buffett? And I say, Jimmy Buffett, the performer. His big song is Margaritaville. All his fans, they call him parrot heads. He's a big star. You should know him. I don't really know him. So just at that, we turned, and there's Jimmy Buffett standing in the doorway. And he has this big, anxious smile of a 10-year-old about to meet his idol, Ernie Banks. So he comes over to us. We're sitting at the table, and Ernie gets up and starts pumping his hand, shaking his hand, and he was saying, Jimmy, it's such a pleasure to meet you. He says, my wife has worn out that record, Margaritaville. She's played it till it's just about, gone. She's a regular parrot head, and you could see Jimmy's smile just going all over his face. And I'm looking kind of sideways at Ernie like, you didn't know who this guy was 5 minutes ago. But he made Jimmy feel like he was the most important person in the world. Okay. Now, later that night, Jimmy, sitting down with us, and Ernie proceeded to interview Jimmy, much like he interviewed me at lunch, asking where Jimmy grew up, how did he get into music, all this other stuff. And after about maybe 40 minutes of that, Ernie says, I got an idea. You need to do a concert at Wrigley Field. And that was in 1995. We got to make this happen, Ernie said. Well, if you know anything about that, there was a concert that Jimmy Buffett performed at Wrigley Field. It wasn't until 2005, okay, because they had to work out the details. But I was at the meeting where we were sitting down where Ernie Banks said, hey, let's do a concert. You need to do a concert here. And he got the people involved with the Cubs organization and talked with Jimmy, and I'm sure he probably doesn't remember Jimmy's name either. But he remembers he was a singer, okay? But again, that's another story where I felt like he really wanted to know the person, and he made you feel like you were the most important person in the world, when you were talking to him, okay? And anytime I saw him, even though he didn't remember your name, he could remember details about you, so.
Wow, that, it makes me laugh, and it makes me want to cry, because it is just so beautiful. And now people are going to hear this story and they're going to know something about Ernie Banks that is just incredible. And you kept being friends with him? You'd see him?
I would see him I'm a big baseball person. I go to baseball conventions, and Ernie was always there. One time a friend of mine and I were going to the Baseball Hall of Fame for an induction ceremony. So we asked if Ernie was going to come, and he was going to come. We were going to meet him there. Well, he bowed out at the last minute, but he arranged for us to have a personal tour of the Baseball Hall of Fame. So we got to go behind the scenes of the Baseball Hall of Fame and go behind the exhibits there and actually hold the bat that Ernie Banks, actually used to hit his 512th home run. So I know that was a big thing. So I would see him at baseball conventions from time to time, and he would always remember that I was thinking about retiring. And he was always about, Lee, never retire. If you'd remember my name, he'd say, you're never going to retire. Keep going. You have, you shouldn't retire. And up until the last time that I saw him, he kept on saying, you're not retired yet, are you? And I'd say, well, I'm thinking about it. Don't do it. And his advice to me, and he actually wrote it on a picture to me that I have here, and it just says, the inscription says, to Lee, keep going. So if I learned a couple of things from Ernie, it's you want to keep going, keep learning, and when you have a conversation with someone, you got to make them feel like they're the most important person in the room, and they'll come away happy and they'll love you. So.
I love that. Keep going, keep learning.
That's right.
From Ernie Banks. That
From Ernie.
is amazing. Wow. Well, I think that your stories are incredible, really fun, and everyone in Chicago and anyone who's like a Chicago Cubs fan is going to love this. I have one last question for you. What makes you feel alive?
Well, I would say I'm a internal learner. I'm always learning things. Learning things. I was an engineer. I like learning things about technology. Um, One nice thing about learning is you have to share it, and I like sharing
Mm.
my knowledge. One of the things that I do, and that's how we met, Rachel, is sharing my knowledge of Pinewood Derby with the Cub Scouts. And I enjoy doing that, and I've been doing that for 60 years. 60 years I've been sharing my knowledge of Pinewood Derby with Scouts, and I do it at the local Scout shop, and I think that's where we met. And I think if you learn something, you've got to pass it on. So I guess what keeps me going is learning and passing on knowledge that I've learned.
Yes, and I am so lucky because my two boys, you worked with them on their Cub Scout Pinewood Derby cars, and they both finished first in the race Den division.
Yes,
So amazing. You do great work. You are the Cub Scout Pinewood Derby car Illuminati.
that's right. That's what I say. You remember that from my speech. That's people that know all the secrets of Pinewood Derby. So I'm a part of that exclusive group. Uh, Not so exclusive, but we like to say we're exclusive in terms of the knowledge of what makes Pinewood Derby cars. And I was happy to work with your sons. We had a lot of fun. I think you had a lot of fun doing it. And I remember you were filming us, and it was a lot of fun.
It was so fun. Lee, thank you so much for your stories. I am so grateful. And I just love those baseballs behind you. It is amazing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you to Kate Wolfer for technical advice and Linroy Palmer Coleman for music.